You've probably felt it before. That sudden sting when someone doesn't answer your message right away. The quiet tightening in your chest when your partner laughs a little too warmly at someone else's joke. It's as if an invisible hand pulls a thread inside you, and before you know it, the thread tightens into a knot. Trust, in that instant, feels fragile, almost breakable, and betrayal, even the faintest suspicion of it, feels louder than all the reassurances you've ever heard. Welcome to NeuroNap Academy. Tonight we walk through the hidden science of jealousy and trust. But what does it mean to trust someone when your own mind is wired to scan for threats? Why do we cling so fiercely to loyalty, yet sabotage it with suspicion? And how much of what we call betrayal is really happening outside of us versus inside the quiet chambers of our brain? You don't need to agree with everything, and you don't need to solve anything tonight. All you need is to walk with me through this strange terrain of the human mind. To make this journey complete, I've prepared a free, practical guide with a clear summary of tonight's video. You'll find it in the description, like a map you can return to anytime when you need clarity. So take a slow breath. Tonight we begin with the first truth, how your brain treats trust like a survival rope. To sense this without theory, place one hand on the rope. You might picture trust as a soft, invisible fabric stretched between you and another person. It feels delicate, like silk pulled tight, shimmering in the light of closeness, and yet, the moment tension rises, that same fabric feels as though it could tear with the slightest strain. Trust in the mind is not a simple belief, it is a survival thread your brain holds as if your safety depended on it. When you place trust in someone, your brain doesn't treat it as an abstract value, it encodes it in reward and threat circuits, weaving expectation into prediction. Each kept promise strengthens the thread, each ambiguity loosens the fibers. You feel this in your body, a small drop in your stomach when a promise slips, a lift in your chest when it's kept. These are not metaphors, they're signals from ancient systems asking one question: am I safe with this person? At the core is a dilemma. The human brain evolved both to bond and to detect betrayal. Your ancestors survived by trusting enough to form alliances, but not so blindly that deception wiped them out. That paradox still lives in you, where every gesture of faith casts a shadow of risk. Imagine crossing a rope bridge over a canyon. Each step toward the other person feels like progress, yet a quiet awareness of the drop remains. The planks creak, the rope sways. You move forward while some part of you glances down. The bridge isn't just a metaphor, it mirrors neural pathways that balance openness with vigilance. Modern neuroscience shows that deciding to trust lights up regions tied to pleasure and expectation, areas bathed in dopamine. Trust is not passive, it's an active bet that the future will unfold kindly. Almost at once the alarm systems stand by, primed for the opposite. This dual activation is why trust feels both exhilarating and frightening, one network leaning toward reward, another testing for rupture. Pause inside that feeling, the thrill of handing over a part of yourself, the ache of wondering if it will be held with care. Trust feels fragile, not because people are always untrustworthy, but because your nervous system keeps the possibility of danger within reach. 100 reassurances may grow familiar, but one hesitation can send the bridge swaying again. The brain weights threat more heavily than comfort. The cost of a missed danger has long outweighed the cost of a false alarm. Philosophers remind us that to trust is to be vulnerable, placing yourself in another's hands without guarantees. Neuroscience adds that vulnerability is a neurobiological state, loosening the defenses of threat circuits while allowing reward circuits to hope. The fragility you feel isn't weakness, it's the precise balance that makes deep connection possible. So notice how your mind handles the thread. Do you tighten your grip, scanning constantly for signs of betrayal, or do you let the rope move, walking with open steps? Both instincts are alive in you, tugging quietly at each other. Which leads to the question that guides us forward. If trust is a fragile bridge, who inside your brain is shaking it, and why does jealousy so often arrive as the storm? Imagine sitting in a quiet cafe. The hum of soft music plays in the background, cups clink against saucers, and the person you care about leans forward, laughing, but their laughter is just a little too long, their eyes just a little too bright, directed at someone else. In that instant, something in you stirs. It is not a calm, reasoned thought. It is a sharp current rising quickly, as if a hidden alarm has been tripped deep inside your chest. That alarm is jealousy, and though we often condemn it as petty or irrational, neuroscience suggests it is neither accidental nor trivial. Jealousy is not simply an emotion, it is a coordinated signal generated by your brain's threat system. It whispers to you, sometimes shouts at you, something you value might be slipping away. This is why suspicion feels louder than reassurance. The brain is designed to privilege potential loss over potential gain. To lose a trusted partner or ally would have meant real danger for your ancestors, less protection, fewer resources, lower survival odds. So your neural circuitry evolved to amplify even the faintest hints of betrayal, ensuring you notice them quickly. Reassurance, by contrast, is a gentle sound, often drowned out by the shrillness of alarm. Inside the amygdala, your brain century begins scanning with greater intensity. It connects with the hypothalamus, triggering cascades of stress hormones. Your heartbeat may rise, your breathing may shift. This is the body preparing to defend itself against abandonment. To your nervous system, jealousy is not drama, it is a survival mechanism rehearsing for the loss of connection. Picture it like a smoke detector in your house. It doesn't just ring when flames engulf the room, it goes off when toast is slightly burnt. Better false alarms than missing the real fire. In the same way, jealousy often exaggerates threats. A casual smile, a passing message, a few extra moments on the phone, these may be nothing at all, but your brain reacts as if they could be the start of something dangerous. And yet, this alarm is not always wrong. Sometimes the cues it detects are real. A partner withdrawing, a friend's shifting loyalties, these are small cracks that can deepen into fractures. The difficulty lies in the fact that the alarm cannot distinguish between smoke and fire. It only alerts, leaving your conscious mind to sort out the meaning. This is where philosophy intertwines with neuroscience. The alarm of jealousy places you at a crossroads. Do you treat it as truth or do you hold it as possibility? Many relationships fracture, not because the alarm was unjustified, but because the response to it became corrosive. Interrogations, accusations, demands for proof. The tragedy is that by trying to secure trust through force, we can end up undermining it. Reflect on how suspicion feels in your own body. It rarely arrives gently. It crashes in, louder than reason, drowning out softer voices. This explains why 1,000 tender gestures may not silence a single seed of doubt. The brain is biased toward vigilance, not comfort. And yet within this bias lies a question. What happens if you begin to listen differently to jealousy, not as a verdict but as an invitation to understand what your brain is protecting? Perhaps the alarm does not mean you are broken, perhaps it means you are wired to guard what matters most. As you sit with that thought, notice how this alarm connects to the deeper architecture of the mind. Because behind the siren of jealousy stands the Watchtower itself, the amygdala scanning the horizon day and night for signs of danger. And that Watchtower is where our journey turns next. You can imagine it now, the Watchtower rising high above the inner landscape of your mind. From this tower, a silent sentry keeps vigil, day and night, scanning for threats that might endanger your bonds. That sentinel is the amygdala, a pair of small, almond-shaped structures deep within your brain. Though tiny in size, they wield immense influence. They do not wait for rational thought. They do not ask your permission. They act first, warning you of danger in fractions of a second. When trust feels uncertain, the amygdala is one of the first regions to stir. Its function is ancient, older than language, older even than complex societies. For your ancestors, it was the difference between safety and catastrophe. The rustle of grass might mean nothing, or it might mean a predator. The shift in a companion's gaze might signal nothing, or it might signal betrayal. The amygdala does not debate, it prepares you. Think of it as a fire beacon at the edge of a medieval village. Even the faintest hint of smoke is enough to ignite the flames, summoning the community to defend itself. In the same way, your amygdala lights up in the presence of ambiguous social signals. A pause before an answer, an unfamiliar name mentioned too often, a smile that feels misdirected. These are enough to make the beacon glow. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala communicates rapidly with the hypothalamus and the brainstem, initiating physical responses. Your pulse quickens, muscles tense, pupils dilate. Long before you form words to describe your suspicion, your body has already shifted into a state of vigilance. This is why jealousy can feel so overwhelming. It is not simply an emotion you think, it is an alarm you inhabit. But here is the paradox. The amygdala does not distinguish between genuine danger and imagined threat. It is finely tuned for sensitivity, not accuracy. Better to risk false alarms than to miss the real one. That is its evolutionary bargain. This means the same circuitry that once saved lives on open plains now stirs when a partner doesn't text back quickly enough. The scale of the threat has changed, but the machinery has not. Reflect on what this reveals about trust. To trust someone is not only to place confidence in them, it is also to quiet the amygdala's watchtower. It is to allow the sentry to lower the torch and let the body soften. And yet this lowering is fragile, easily undone by the faintest spark of uncertainty. Philosophically, this presents a dilemma. If your brain is wired to react so quickly, can trust ever be entirely rational? Perhaps not. Perhaps trust is less about evidence and more about learning to coexist with the watchtower, to acknowledge that the sentry will always light its fires, and to decide again and again whether to act on its alarms or to let them burn out in the night air. Notice how this shifts the meaning of jealousy. Instead of condemning yourself for feeling it, you can recognize it as the amygdala's voice. It is your body's way of saying, be alert, you might lose something vital. This recognition does not erase the discomfort, but it transforms it into understanding. Still, the amygdala never works alone when its fire burns. Another system fans the flames, the body's stress machinery. The surge of hormones that rush through you when suspicion arises is not separate from the watchtower. It is the smoke that carries the signal deeper into your being. And that is where our path now leads, into the shadow of cortisol, the chemical messenger that can make trust feel like walking through fog. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a forest at dusk. The air is cooling, the light fading, and every sound feels sharper. The snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an unseen bird. Your body responds before your thoughts do. Shoulders tighten, breath quickens, senses sharpen. This is the landscape of cortisol, the hormone that shadows your moments of doubt and suspicion. When trust falters, your amygdala does not act alone. It signals the hypothalamus, which in turn releases a cascade of stress chemicals, culminating in cortisol. This hormone is your body's long-distance messenger, instructing organs and tissues to prepare for uncertainty. In ancient times, it readied your muscles to flee or fight. Today, it often courses through you when you're waiting for a reply to a message, when you sense distance in a partner's tone, or when your mind loops endlessly on the question, am I safe here? The presence of cortisol is not subtle. It sharpens vigilance but dulls peace. You might feel restless, find it harder to concentrate, or notice your sleep becomes light and fractured. Cortisol whispers to your body that the world is unstable, and in relationships, instability is felt as threat. This is why reassurance often doesn't stick. The words may comfort for a moment, but the hormonal tide beneath can continue its quiet pull. Think of cortisol like a fog that creeps through the forest of your mind. It blurs shapes, distorts distances, and makes every shadow appear larger than it is. A late arrival becomes suspicious. A short response feels loaded. The fog magnifies uncertainty until you begin to see threat where none may exist. Philosophers have long warned of fear's power to reshape perception. Neuroscience now shows the machinery behind that warning. Under the influence of cortisol, the brain tilts toward negative interpretations. It is not simply that you choose to worry, it is that your nervous system makes worry the more accessible path. Trust, then, is not only a psychological act, but a biological achievement to calm the body enough for clarity to return. And yet, cortisol has another face. It can also sharpen memory, embedding moments of betrayal deeply into your mind. This explains why you might forget dozens of peaceful days, but recall with vivid clarity the one argument, the one unanswered call, the one silence that carried weight. The hormone marks the moment as significant, so your brain will not let it go. In this way, cortisol becomes both the shadow of fear and the scribe of memory. Pause and consider what this means for your experience of trust. When you feel shaken by jealousy or suspicion, part of what you wrestle with is chemical, not merely emotional. You are walking through a fog laid down by your own biology. Recognizing this does not dissolve the fog, but it can soften the blame you place on yourself. And yet trust cannot survive in shadow alone. For every system that magnifies fear, another balances it with anticipation of pleasure. Where cortisol pulls you into vigilance, Dopamine tempts you with the sweetness of connection, the promise of joy, the possibility that trust will bring reward. And so, as the fog lingers, another force waits on the horizon, the dopamine trap, where the same circuits that bring delight can also intensify jealousy's grip. Imagine the sudden buzz of your phone lighting up in the dark. For an instant, your heart lifts. You hope it's a message from the one you care about. That surge of anticipation, that quick flash of pleasure, is dopamine at work. It is the brain's currency of reward, a chemical signal promising that something good may be about to happen. But here lies the trap. The same system that makes trust feel sweet also makes suspicion unbearably sharp. Dopamine circuits run through the brain like hidden rivers, flowing most strongly through areas that predict reward. Each time your partner keeps a promise, each time they offer a tender gesture, those rivers surge, reinforcing the bond. But dopamine is not content with satisfaction alone. It thrives on contrast, on the difference between what you expect and what you receive. This is why a small disappointment can feel so disproportionately heavy. The drop after the surge is sharper than if no anticipation had been built at all. Think of it like climbing a hill on a bicycle. The ascent fills you with effort and hope. The crest feels exhilarating, but the moment the road dips unexpectedly, the descent jolts you. The joy of the climb is bound to the risk of the fall. In the brain, dopamine is both the ascent and the sharpness of the drop. It does not simply reward, it exaggerates the emotional swing between delight and letdown. This is why jealousy so often accompanies intimacy. The very circuits that make closeness intoxicating also make it vulnerable. If you expect attention, affection, or reassurance, and it does not arrive, the contrast activates the same dopamine pathways, but in reverse. Instead of sweetness, you feel craving. Instead of fullness, you feel ache. It is as if the brain is not only missing the reward, but demanding it louder. Neuroscientists call this prediction error, the gap between expectation and outcome. The larger the gap, the more powerfully the dopamine system reacts. In love, prediction errors are everywhere. Missed calls, delayed replies, broken plans. Each one stirs the same machinery that once kept your ancestors alert for ripe fruit or hidden danger. What once served survival now magnifies emotional storms. Philosophically, this raises an unsettling truth. The intensity of love and the sharpness of jealousy are inseparable. The more joy your brain anticipates, the deeper the ache when that joy is withheld. Trust, then, is not a calm plateau, but a landscape of peaks and valleys, carved by the rise and fall of dopamine's tides. Pause for a moment and imagine how this feels in your own body. The high of a message that begins with warmth, the low of silence that follows when you crave reply. These are not minor fluctuations. They are rivers of chemistry running through you. To love is to ride those currents, to accept that sweetness and ache are bound together. But dopamine is not destiny. Other systems shape how we endure these rises and falls. Long before adult relationships, your brain mapped how trust feels, whether safe, fragile, or conditional. Those early maps drawn in the intimacy of childhood guide the way dopamine's rivers are channeled later in life. And so our journey turns now to those maps, to the attachment patterns that quietly steer how you give and receive trust. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a child reaching out, arms lifted, waiting to be held. The expression on their face is a mixture of hope and vulnerability. If the caregiver responds warmly, consistently, that child's nervous system encodes safety. The body learns, when I need, someone comes. But if the arms remain empty too often, or the response is unpredictable, the child's brain writes a different script. Connection is uncertain. I must be vigilant. These early scripts are what psychologists call attachment patterns, and they form the maps that guide how you later experience trust. Your brain does not begin as a blank canvas. From the first months of life, regions linked to stress and soothing, like the amygdala and the orbitofrontal cortex, are being shaped by experience. A caregiver's consistent presence helps wire pathways that quiet fear and stabilize dopamine's rise and fall. An inconsistent or absent caregiver, by contrast, primes the brain for hypervigilance, amplifying cortisol responses and making trust feel like walking on unstable ground. These patterns do not dictate destiny, but they set the stage upon which adult relationships play out. Think of it as learning to sail. A child whose early years provided steady winds and reliable waters learns to trust the boat and the sea. A child whose early years were stormy learns instead to grip the edges, to expect sudden swells, to doubt the calm. Later, when faced with the ocean of intimacy, each sailor still carries those habits. One may drift easily into closeness, another may brace constantly for betrayal. Neuroscience offers vivid evidence for this. Brain imaging studies show that securely attached individuals, those who grew up with consistent caregiving, exhibit stronger connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. This means their reasoning systems can calm alarms more effectively. Insecurely attached individuals often show weaker links, meaning alarms flare higher and longer before settling. The difference is not moral strength but wiring sculpted by experience. And yet, these maps are not unchangeable. Neuroplasticity allows new patterns to be drawn, though the process is slower and often more fragile than the initial imprinting. This is why relationships can feel both healing and threatening. Each new bond has the potential to redraw the map, but also to confirm the old one. Philosophically, this suggests something profound. When you trust as an adult, you are not only trusting the present person, you are also trusting the echoes of your past. You are leaning not only on today's rope bridge, but on bridges built long ago in childhood. Each creak and sway of those old structures is felt in your body, even if your conscious mind cannot name them. This recognition can soften the edges of self-blame. When jealousy rises quickly, when trust feels harder than you think it should, it is not because you are defective, it is because your nervous system is still carrying maps drawn in earlier seasons of life. These maps can be redrawn, but only with patience, compassion, and repeated experience of safety. Pause with this awareness. Imagine your own attachment map not as fixed ink, but as a landscape drawn in sand. Waves of new experience can reshape it, smoothing rough edges, carving new paths. Trust, then, is not only a choice in the moment, it is also an act of rewriting your own history, one safe encounter at a time. And yet, even with secure maps, betrayal still wounds deeply. Because when trust shatters, the brain does not treat it as a mild disappointment, it treats it as pain, as if the body itself has been injured. This is where we must go next, into the strange overlap between social rejection and physical pain. Imagine stubbing your toe against the corner of a table. The sharp jolt makes you gasp, clutching at the spot, waiting for the ache to fade. Now imagine reading a message that confirms a betrayal, a partner's confession, a friend's dismissal, the unmistakable signal that trust has been broken. Strangely, your brain does not treat these two experiences as entirely separate. Rejection and betrayal light up many of the same neural circuits as physical injury. This is the startling science of social pain. Neuroimaging studies show that when someone experiences exclusion, the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region activated during physical pain, flares to life. The overlap is not metaphorical, it is biological. The brain treats the rupture of social bonds as a wound, as if safety has been pierced. And just as physical pain compels you to protect your body, social pain compels you to protect your connections. Think of it this way: for your ancestors, being cast out from the group was not merely uncomfortable, it was lethal. Survival depended on belonging. The same brain regions that once made a broken bone impossible to ignore, evolved to make rejection impossible to dismiss. A bruise may heal, but a betrayal leaves an ache the brain replays, as if testing the wound again and again. This explains why the memory of rejection lingers so strongly. The cortisol you learned about earlier reinforces it, tagging the event as significant, embedding it deeply. Even years later, a reminder, an old photograph, a familiar phrase can reopen the ache. It is not weakness, it is biology. Your nervous system insists that you not forget the wound, so you may avoid it again. But here lies a paradox. Physical pain usually has a clear boundary. The toe heals, the bruise fades. Social pain does not obey the same rhythm. It loops in memory, reappears in dreams, inserts itself into silence. The brain struggles to close the wound because the source, the social bond, is not a simple object that can be stitched or splintered. It lives in meaning, memory, expectation. Philosophers have long spoken of betrayal as a kind of death, the death of what was believed. Neuroscience now reveals why this language feels so natural. When trust breaks, your brain reacts as if your very body has been struck. The ache is not only emotional, it is embodied. Pause and notice how this recognition reshapes your view of jealousy and trust. If betrayal hurts like a wound, then suspicion can feel like guarding a scar. You may brace against intimacy not because you do not value it, but because the pain of rupture has been written into your very nerves. Yet within this pain lies a strange opening. The same circuits that register rejection are also involved in empathy. To feel hurt is to be reminded of how deeply connection matters, how essential closeness is to the human condition. The ache of rejection, unbearable as it seems, is also proof of your capacity for love. Still, the brain does not stop at pain. It seeks patterns, trying to read faces, gestures, tones for clues about loyalty. This is where another system steps in: mirror neurons, those quiet imitators in your brain that make you feel another's smile or frown as if it were your own. They can deepen empathy, but they can also feed suspicion, magnifying tiny cues into imagined truths. And that is where we turn next, into the world of mirror neurons and the way they can make us see more than is truly there. Picture yourself sitting across from someone you love. They shift in their chair, glance to the side, or smile faintly at their phone. Without thinking, your body reacts. You lean in, your chest tightens, your thoughts start running ahead. The gesture may have been small, but you feel it as if it were larger than life. This sensitivity is not just imagination, it is the quiet work of mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are special cells scattered through regions of your brain, such as the premotor cortex and inferior parietal lobe. They fire not only when you perform an action, but also when you observe someone else performing it. If they smile, parts of your brain smile with them. If they frown, your neurons rehearse the frown inside your own body. These cells are the reason emotions ripple between people so quickly, why tension in a room feels contagious, why a partner's distant gaze can sting even before words are spoken. In their essence, mirror neurons help create empathy. They let you simulate the experience of another, weaving connection from gestures and expressions. But when trust feels fragile, this same system can turn against you. It makes you hypersensitive, magnifying small cues into signals of betrayal. A half-second delay before answering may feel like withdrawal. A brief smile at a stranger may feel like intimacy misplaced. The neurons mirror not only joy but suspicion. Think of it as standing before a hall of mirrors. Each reflection is slightly distorted, but you still recognize yourself. Now imagine trying to judge truth through those reflections, each one amplifying a gesture, exaggerating a pause, turning ambiguity into certainty. This is what happens when mirror neurons fire under the weight of jealousy. They echo reality, but with distortions that your mind may mistake for evidence. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala and mirror systems often work together. The amygdala sets the alarm, scanning for danger, while mirror neurons provide the details, interpreting subtle cues, filling in gaps. Together, they create a powerful story. Something is wrong here, and once the story begins, your mind struggles to stop it. Philosophically, this raises a profound challenge. If your perception of another's gestures is filtered through mirror systems, how much of what you believe you see is truly there, and how much is your own mind echoing back at you? Perhaps suspicion is not always about the other person. Perhaps it is sometimes the echo of your own fear, reflected back through the neural hall of mirrors. This recognition does not erase jealousy, but it offers perspective. To notice that your mind magnifies cues is to loosen their grip. You can pause, breathe, and ask, is this reflection accurate, or am I staring at a distortion? And yet, even with awareness, suspicion rarely dissolves quickly, because another player steps into the scene, the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning judge of the brain. It tries to weigh evidence, to argue against the alarms, to soothe the reflections, but often it arrives late, trying to calm storms already raging. Next we'll step into that courtroom of the mind, the prefrontal judge who struggles to reason with the alarms of jealousy. Imagine a courtroom inside your mind. At the center sits a stern judge, calm and deliberate, dressed not in robes but in the intricate folds of the prefrontal cortex. This region of your brain is tasked with weighing evidence, considering probabilities, and making decisions that extend beyond the impulses of the moment. When jealousy rises, when the amygdala sounds its alarm and mirror neurons magnify every gesture, the prefrontal judge is summoned to restore order. The judge does not shout. Instead, it gathers facts, slows the pace, and offers alternative explanations. Maybe that smile was nothing. Maybe the delay in response was circumstantial. Maybe your partner is simply tired. This reasoning comes from neural networks in the dorsolateral and ventromedial prefrontal cortex, areas specialized in executive control and evaluation of risk. They try to balance the fires lit by emotion with the cool weight of logic. But here lies the difficulty. The judge is often late to the trial. Emotional signals travel faster than rational ones. The amygdala can fire in milliseconds, while the prefrontal cortex requires more time to process context. By the time reason speaks, the body is already tense, the heartbeat elevated, cortisol circulating. The jury of your nervous system may already be leaning toward guilt long before the evidence has been reviewed. Think of it as a chess match between two players moving at different speeds. The amygdala makes rapid, instinctual moves, fast, defensive, sometimes reckless. The prefrontal cortex plays a slower, more deliberate game. It sees the board more clearly, but risks being overwhelmed by the momentum of the faster player. Trust hangs in the balance between these two strategies, the speed of emotion and the depth of reason. When trust holds, it is often because the judge manages to calm the alarms, reminding you of past loyalty, of patterns of safety, of reasons to stay open. But when trust collapses, it is often because the judge is drowned out by the chorus of suspicion. The emotional storm grows too loud, and reason's voice becomes faint. Philosophically, this raises a question. If reason is slower than emotion, what does it mean to choose trust? Perhaps trust is less a single decision, and more a repeated act of listening, of allowing the slower voice to be heard even while the faster alarms demand action. To trust is not to silence emotion, but to make space for logic to stand beside it. Consider how this feels in your own life. Have there been times when you knew, rationally, that suspicion was unfounded, yet your body continued to brace? That is the prefrontal judge attempting to steady the scales against the weight of ancient alarms. It does not always succeed, but its effort matters. Without it, suspicion would reign unchecked. Still, even when the judge speaks, the mind often replays the trial over and over. The same accusations return, the same doubts circle endlessly, as if the verdict can never truly be reached. This endless replay has a name: rumination. It is the spiral that follows when trust has been shaken, pulling the mind into loops that seem impossible to escape. And it is into that spiral, the mind's repeated courtroom, that we now turn. Picture a song stuck in your head. The same refrain plays again and again, no matter how hard you try to silence it. Now imagine that instead of music, what repeats is a memory of betrayal, or even the suspicion of it. The moment replays in detail, the look, the pause, the words left unsaid. Each time the loop begins, your body reacts as if it were happening all over again. This is the spiral of rumination, the mental whirlpool that makes trust so hard to restore once it has been shaken. Rumination is more than worry. It is the brain's attempt to solve a puzzle it cannot let go of. The anterior cingulate cortex, which you learnt earlier, responds to social pain, links with memory circuits in the hippocampus and with executive areas of the prefrontal cortex. Together, they circle the same material. Why did this happen? What did I miss? How can I be sure it won't happen again? The goal is resolution, but the effect is entrapment. Think of it like pacing a labyrinth. Each turn feels like progress, yet the walls only lead you back to where you started. The more you walk, the more exhausted you become, yet the exit remains hidden. Rumination convinces the brain it is working towards safety, when in reality it is feeding the very uncertainty it hopes to quiet. Cortisol deepens the trap. Each replay strengthens the emotional tag of the memory, making it sharper, heavier. The body reacts each time as if the threat were fresh, heart quickening, breath tightening, muscles bracing. This explains why even small betrayals or minor suspicions can feel inescapable. The replay multiplies the impact until the experience outweighs its actual scale. Philosophically, rumination reveals a paradox of the human mind. We are wired not only to remember but to relive. Unlike other animals, we can imagine the past as vividly as the present, binding ourselves to experiences long gone. This capacity gives us wisdom, but it also gives us torment. To be human is to be able to suffer twice, once in the event and again in the remembering. Yet within this spiral lies a clue. If the brain replays betrayal so vividly, it also means the brain is capable of rewriting how it is held. Neuroplasticity allows new associations to form, so that a memory once tied only to pain may eventually be linked with resilience, with lessons, even with forgiveness. The spiral need not be endless, though escaping it requires conscious practice, mindfulness, reframing, deliberate release. Pause here and notice the irony. Rumination is the mind's attempt to regain control, yet it often reveals how little control we truly have. Perhaps the deeper work of trust is not to silence the spiral instantly, but to recognize its nature, to see it as a labyrinth built of your own neurons, and to walk it with gentleness rather than force. Still, rumination does not arise in isolation. It is fed by memory, by the way past betrayals linger and cast shadows on the present. To understand why trust feels fragile, we must step next into memory's double-edged role, the way it protects us by preserving danger, yet wounds us by refusing to let go. Imagine walking down a familiar street. The buildings are the same, the air carries the same scents, but then you notice a small cafe on the corner, the same cafe where a painful conversation once unfolded. Instantly your body shifts, the memory rushes back, not just as thought but as sensation, the tone of voice, the heaviness in your chest, the silence that lingered after. This is the double-edged nature of memory. It keeps you safe by reminding you of pain, but it also binds you to the very wounds you long to escape. The hippocampus, deep within your brain, acts as the archivist of these experiences. It stores not only facts but contexts, places, faces, voices, even smells. When trust is broken, the hippocampus marks the memory with a vivid tag, often reinforced by the amygdala and stress hormones like cortisol. The result is a recollection that does not fade easily. Evolution designed this system to protect you. If betrayal was dangerous once, remembering it ensures you avoid similar threats again. But the same protective mechanism becomes a burden in relationships. A new partner's delayed reply may trigger the memory of a past silence. An innocent gesture may awaken the echo of a former betrayal. The brain does not always separate past from present. It layers them as if the old wound lies just beneath the skin of today. This is why trust can feel so difficult to rebuild. Not only are you relating to the person before you, but also to the ghosts of those who hurt you before. Think of memory as a double-edged sword. One edge cuts toward wisdom. It teaches you caution, shows you patterns, reminds you not to walk blindly into danger. The other edge cuts toward paralysis. It keeps you replaying pain, seeing threat even where none exists. The sword protects and wounds at once, leaving you wondering whether to grip it tightly or lay it down. Philosophically, this speaks to the tension between remembering and forgetting. Too much forgetting, and you risk repeating the same harm. Too much remembering, and you risk never truly living anew. Trust requires both edges, the wisdom to recall danger and the courage to release what no longer belongs to the present. Pause here and reflect. Which edge of the sword feels sharper in your own life? Do your memories guide you with gentle caution, or do they chain you to suspicion? Recognizing this balance is the first step toward reshaping it. Neuroscience offers hope. Just as memories can be reinforced, they can also be reconsolidated, reshaped each time they are recalled. With new experiences of safety, with repeated reassurances, the emotional weight of an old memory can soften. The sword may never vanish, but its edges can dull, allowing you to carry it without bleeding. Still, even as memory haunts, another system works to soothe, the quiet chemical glue of bonding, oxytocin. It can stitch wounds, ease vigilance, and soften fear, but it can also blind you, binding you too tightly, even when danger is real. And that is where our journey goes next, into oxytocin, the fragile glue of trust. Picture two people embracing. Their breathing slows, their muscles soften, and for a moment the world feels safer. Behind that safety lies a molecule often called the bonding hormone, oxytocin, released during touch, intimacy, and moments of closeness. It acts as a fragile glue that binds people together. But like any glue, it has limits. Too little, and bonds weaken. Too much, and you may cling even when harm is near. Oxytocin is produced in the hypothalamus and released into both the bloodstream and the brain. It reduces activity in threat circuits, calming the amygdala's alarms. This is why a hug can lower stress, why eye contact with someone you trust feels grounding, why the warmth of presence can quiet the noise of suspicion. The hormone whispers to your body, you are safe here. In moments of connection, oxytocin creates a cocoon around the fragile thread of trust. But here is the paradox. Oxytocin does not create truth, it creates perception. It makes you more likely to trust, but not necessarily more accurate in choosing whom to trust. In this sense, it can blind as well as soothe. If released in the presence of someone unreliable, it may make you overlook warning signs. The glue can strengthen bonds, but it cannot tell whether the bond deserves to be strengthened. Think of oxytocin as a soft light in a dark room. It allows you to relax, to see with warmth rather than fear. But in that same glow, shadows may blur. The danger may still be there. You are simply less able to perceive it clearly. This is why some relationships linger long after they should end, because the brain's chemistry continues to reinforce attachment, even in the presence of betrayal. Philosophically, this reveals something unsettling. Trust is never purely rational. It is shaped by forces beneath awareness, by chemicals that tilt perception toward closeness. To trust is not simply to weigh evidence, but to be carried, often unknowingly, by tides of biology. This does not diminish the beauty of trust, it deepens it, showing that connection is not only a choice, but also a gift of the body's design. Pause and reflect on this in your own life. The warmth you feel when held, the calm that settles during touch, the comfort of being seen, these are not illusions, they are real, embodied states created by oxytocin. They may not guarantee truth, but they grant moments of peace, and peace itself can be healing. Still, to understand trust fully, we must step back into time's larger arc. Oxytocin may soothe in the present, but jealousy itself has roots stretching far into our evolutionary past. To know why suspicion feels so deeply wired, we must ask, why did evolution embed jealousy into love at all? And so our journey moves to the evolutionary code, the ancient logic that made jealousy not an error, but a survival tool. Imagine standing in the vast savanna thousands of years ago. The horizon stretches endlessly, herds move in the distance, and survival depends not only on food and shelter but on connection. In this ancient landscape, jealousy was not merely an inconvenience, it was an adaptation, a built-in system designed to protect bonds essential for survival. What today feels like suspicion was once the difference between lineage continued and lineage lost. From an evolutionary perspective, trust and jealousy are two sides of the same coin. For our ancestors, securing a reliable partner increased the chances of raising children successfully, but rivals always hovered at the edges of the tribe, and betrayal carried real costs. A misplaced trust could mean fewer resources, less protection, and genetic loss. To guard against this, the brain developed vigilance systems that flare when loyalty is in doubt. Neuroscience reveals traces of this ancient code. The amygdala and related circuits respond not only to physical threats, but to social ones, treating betrayal as danger on par with predators. Hormones like testosterone and vasopressin amplify protective behaviors, making individuals more attentive to rivals or signs of infidelity. These reactions, often criticized as irrational today, were once part of the survival script written into human biology. Think of jealousy as a fire kept at the edge of the camp. When small, it wards off predators, reminding partners to stay close, signaling to rivals that bonds are guarded. But if the fire grows uncontrolled, it spreads, consuming trust itself. Evolution lit the fire for safety, but left us with the burden of tending it carefully. Philosophically, this leads to a difficult reflection. If jealousy is woven into love, can love ever be free of it? Perhaps not entirely. The presence of jealousy may not always mean insecurity or weakness. It may mean that ancient instincts still breathe within modern hearts. To feel its sting is to touch the same survival code that guided countless generations before you. Yet the gift of being human lies in awareness. Unlike your ancestors, you can see the fire for what it is. You can choose whether to feed it or to let it fade. The instinct may be ancient, but the response can be modern, tempered by reflection, guided by compassion. Pause with this realization. The jealousy you feel is not solely yours. It is the echo of millions of lives lived before you. It is the shadow of a survival strategy that once kept families alive on open plains. To recognize this is not to excuse destructive behavior, but to place your emotions within the vast arc of human history. And still, jealousy is not only personal, it thrives within groups, shaped by the currents of gossip, alliances, and reputations. To understand trust fully, we must move from the individual mind to the collective one, the social brain, where loyalty and betrayal ripple outward into the community. Imagine a small circle of people gathered around a fire. The flames flicker, shadows dance, and voices weave stories that carry meaning and warning. In this circle, trust is not only a bond between two individuals, it is the thread that holds the entire group together. To belong is to survive. To be cast out is to face the wilderness alone. This is the realm of the social brain, where jealousy and loyalty are not private emotions, but public forces shaping community life. Your brain is not built in isolation. Networks such as the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction light up when you think about others, their motives, their trustworthiness, their place in your circle. These regions form what neuroscientists call the social brain, a system evolved to navigate alliances, detect deception, and maintain reputation. For our ancestors, knowing who could be trusted was as important as knowing where water could be found. Gossip, often dismissed as trivial, was one of the earliest tools of this system. Sharing stories of who was loyal and who was not helped groups regulate behavior. To hear that someone betrayed trust was to receive a survival warning. Even today, when you feel uneasy after hearing a rumor about someone close to you, it is the same circuitry at work. The social brain processes information about reputation as if it were vital currency. Think of trust in this context as a communal bridge. Each person's reliability adds planks. Each betrayal removes them. The bridge must be strong enough to hold the weight of collective survival. This is why betrayal carries such a sting, not only because of personal hurt, but because it signals danger to the larger web of connections. Philosophically, this reveals something profound. Trust is never entirely private. Even in intimate relationships, the gaze of the wider community lingers. Friends, family, and peers shape how bonds are perceived, supported, or questioned. The social brain binds your inner world to the collective one, reminding you that trust always ripples outward. Pause and reflect on how this plays out today. A comment on social media, a friend's opinion, a whispered doubt, these can influence how safe or unsafe you feel with someone. The same circuits that once listened around the fire now listen across networks of digital connection. The stage has changed, but the brain has not. And here lies a subtle twist. Social evaluation does not only influence your judgments of others, it shapes your sense of time itself. When trust feels secure, moments flow smoothly. When suspicion rises, time seems to slow, stretching the silence, magnifying each second of doubt. Next, we will explore this strange link between trust and time, the way your brain bends the flow of moments depending on whether you feel safe or threatened. Picture waiting for a message from someone you love. You check your phone once, twice, 3 times in a single minute. Each second feels stretched, heavy, as if time itself has slowed to mock your impatience. Now picture a moment of laughter with that same person, when the hours slip away unnoticed, vanishing like water between your fingers. This contrast is not imagination, it is the way trust bends your perception of time. Neuroscience shows that time perception is not fixed but elastic, shaped by emotional states. The striatum and insular regions of the brain involved in timing are influenced by dopamine and cortisol, those same chemicals that weave through trust and jealousy. When trust feels steady and rewarding, dopamine smooths your sense of time, making moments feel light and swift. When doubt enters, cortisol sharpens attention, stretching each pause, slowing each silence, amplifying the weight. Think of it like 2 kinds of clocks. In trust, you live by a sunlit clock, where hours drift easily, marked by warmth and continuity. In suspicion, you live by a dripping clock, each second falling loudly, demanding attention, refusing to pass quietly. The clock does not change, but your brain does, accelerating or slowing your subjective time depending on whether safety or threat dominates. Philosophically, this reveals something striking. Trust is not only about connection to others, it is about connection to the flow of your own life. When trust holds, life feels expansive, days open wide. When trust breaks, life contracts, each moment dragging under the weight of vigilance. To mistrust is to live in stretched time, to feel every second as a burden. Pause and reflect on your own memories. When you felt deeply safe with someone, how quickly did evenings dissolve into dawn? And when you feared betrayal, how long did a single unanswered call feel? These are not trivial distortions. They are the fabric of your lived experience, shaped by your brain's response to trust. This elasticity also explains why dreams often carry the themes of betrayal and insecurity. At night, the brain replays fears in distorted timelines, stretching seconds into hours, weaving scenarios that echo jealousy's alarms. To understand why these dreams feel so vivid, we must step into the theater of the sleeping mind, where betrayal often rehearses itself in shadows. And so, our path turns next to the world of dreams. where the brain plays out the dramas of trust and insecurity, often more vividly than waking life itself. Close your eyes and imagine the strange theatre of dreams. The stage is shifting, scenes dissolve into one another, and suddenly you are watching the one you love walking away with someone else. You try to call out, but your voice fails. You run, but your legs move slowly, as if through water. You wake with a racing heart, the betrayal vivid, even though nothing has truly happened. Dreams of betrayal feel real, because to the dreaming brain, they are real. During sleep, particularly in REM stages, the brain activates circuits involved in emotion and memory. The amygdala, that ancient watchtower of threat, glows with heightened activity. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the calm judge of reason, is quieter, less able to soften alarms. This imbalance means fears, doubts, and jealous suspicions often play unfiltered across the dream stage, more intense and less rational than in waking life. Think of dreams as rehearsal spaces. They allow the brain to simulate danger, to test responses without real-world consequences. For your ancestors, dreaming of threats may have prepared them to respond to predators or rivals. Today, those simulations often play out in the realm of trust. Imagine betrayals, partners leaving, friendships dissolving. The brain treats relational security as vital enough to rehearse even in the silence of sleep. But dreams are not only warnings, they are also reflections. They pull material from your waking life, weaving it into narratives that expose your deepest concerns. A delay in response, a small misunderstanding, a lingering doubt may reappear in dreams as full betrayal, magnified and symbolic. The dream does not predict the future, it dramatizes the present state of your nervous system. Philosophically, this raises a delicate point. If betrayal in dreams feels as painful as betrayal in life, what does that say about the nature of trust? Perhaps trust is not only about external reality, but about the inner landscapes we carry. Even in perfect loyalty, the mind can imagine rupture. To live with trust is therefore not to eliminate doubt entirely, but to recognize that doubt exists both outside and inside, in waking and in dreaming. Pause and notice the feeling of such dreams. They can leave you unsettled, even suspicious, as though your partner's imagined disloyalty carried weight in reality. This is the brain's blurring of lines, where the rehearsal echoes into waking life. Recognizing this can help. The dream is not evidence, it is expression, a mirror of your fears, not a prophecy of betrayal. And yet not all trust is negotiated in words or dreams. Much of it lives in silence, in gestures, glances, pauses. To truly understand how the brain processes trust, we must turn to the unspoken world of non-verbal cues, where meaning often outweighs language. Imagine sitting with someone you love in complete silence. No words are exchanged, yet the space between you feels charged. A glance, a shift of posture, the way their hand rests near yours, these tiny cues speak volumes. In fact, most of what you interpret as trust or mistrust is carried not by language but by silence. The human brain is exquisitely tuned to these subtle signals. Regions like the superior temporal sulcus and fusiform gyrus process faces, gestures and micro-expressions almost instantly. Your mirror neurons, which we explored earlier, echo these cues in your own body, giving you a felt sense of another's state. In silence, this system grows louder, filling the gaps where words might distract. Think of it as music between notes. The melody is not only in what is played, but in the pauses that give shape to sound. Likewise, trust is built not only on what is said, but on the spaces in between, the quiet moments where presence itself carries meaning. A steady gaze can soften your body, averted eyes can sharpen suspicion. Silence is not empty, it is filled with interpretations your brain rushes to complete. Philosophically, this is profound. If trust is so dependent on nonverbal cues, then it is not merely a matter of agreements or promises, it is an atmosphere, a felt reality, an unspoken language constantly being written and read. To live with someone is to dwell inside this invisible script, where silence often reveals more than speech. Yet silence is double-edged. It can soothe, offering calm companionship, or it can wound, signaling withdrawal. The same pause can be felt as peace or as distance, depending on the map your nervous system carries from past experiences. For someone with secure attachment, silence may be rest. For someone primed by betrayal, silence may be a void filled with imagined danger. Pause and reflect on how you experience silence in your own life. Do you lean into it, letting it hold you gently, or do you brace, searching for what might be hidden in the quiet? Recognizing this response is part of understanding how trust operates beneath awareness. And here lies the illusion of control. We often believe that if we analyze enough, question enough, fill silence with words, we can master trust, bend it into certainty. But the truth is more complex. The mind seeks control where none can be fully had. This illusion drives many of our struggles with jealousy and suspicion. So next we step into that very illusion, the mind's attempt to control the unpredictable terrain of trust. Imagine holding water in your hands. You cup your palms tightly, trying to keep every drop, but the harder you press, the more it slips through your fingers. This is the illusion of control in trust. Your brain longs for certainty in relationships, yet the very nature of human bonds is unpredictability. The paradox is painful. The more you try to secure trust with absolute control, the more fragile it becomes. Neuroscience shows why this is so. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and prediction, works tirelessly to reduce uncertainty. It constantly asks, where is my partner? What are they doing? Can I predict their loyalty? This drive for prediction is rooted in survival. A predictable environment is safer than a chaotic one, but human beings are not equations. They are shifting, feeling complex. Attempts to map them fully often lead to frustration. Meanwhile, the brain's reward circuits push for reinforcement. When you receive reassurance, a text, a smile, a promise, dopamine surges, rewarding your vigilance. But like any habit loop, this reinforcement strengthens the craving. You begin to seek more proof, more certainty, more guarantees. The illusion grows. If you can gather enough evidence, you will finally silence doubt. Yet the brain is wired to find new uncertainties, new gaps, new questions. The search never ends. Think of it like trying to still the surface of a lake by pressing on the water. Each attempt creates ripples. Each ripple creates more turbulence. Control does not bring peace. It magnifies disturbance. Trust, by contrast, requires letting the water settle on its own. Philosophically, this raises a profound truth. Trust can never be fully controlled because it is not a possession, it is a state of being between two unpredictable minds. To demand certainty is to miss its essence. Trust is valuable precisely because it carries risk. To seek guarantees is to strip it of meaning. Pause and reflect on this tension. How often have you sought reassurance only to find it temporary, leading to another round of doubt? How often has control tightened your grip, only to leave you more restless? Recognizing the illusion does not erase the craving, but it can soften it. You begin to see that certainty was never the promise, connection was. And yet, even when control fails, the brain is not fixed in suspicion. Through neuroplasticity, it can learn new patterns. Forgiveness, compassion, and repeated safe experiences can reshape pathways, making trust possible again, even after betrayal. This leads us to a question of healing. How can the brain, after being burned by mistrust, relearn to open? To explore this, we must step into the science of forgiveness and the astonishing adaptability of neuroplasticity. Picture a forest path after a storm. Branches have fallen across the trail, puddles murk the ground, and the route you once walked with ease now feels blocked and unfamiliar. You pause, remembering the smooth way your feet used to know, and for a moment you wonder if the path is gone for good. Forgiveness, when trust has been broken, feels like this. Not a sudden clearing, not an instant restoration, but the slow, patient work of finding a way forward again, sometimes on the old trail, sometimes by carving a new one through the undergrowth. Inside your brain, the possibility of this new path rests on a quiet gift, neuroplasticity. Your mind is not fixed in the shape of betrayal. Even after pain, your neural connections can change, strengthening, weakening, and rerouting in response to experience. When you practice forgiving, you are not erasing what happened. You are teaching your brain to hold it differently. Circuits that once linked the memory of a person to the shock of danger can, with time and repetition, link that same memory to signals of safety, perspective, and choice. At first, the older route dominates. The amygdala, quick to alarm, has associated this person, this place, this phrase with threat. The moment you recall the wound, your body shifts, heart quickens, breath shallows, attention narrows. This is the storm debris across your path. But another system steps in when you aim for forgiveness, the prefrontal cortex, your slow, steady guide. It does something deceptively simple. It reinterprets. It places the event in context, names what was harmful, and articulates what you will and will not accept. Each time it does this calmly, it sends a signal back down to the alarm centers, teaching them that the present moment is not the same as the past. Think of this as learning to walk again through a patch of forest that once frightened you. The first few passes, you move carefully, alert to every sound. With more walks, your steps grow smoother. The trees don't change, your nervous system does. The thalamus no longer prioritizes threat signals so aggressively. Midline regions that knit story and self begin to weave meaning that includes the wound but does not revolve around it. Even the anterior cingulate, the region that lights during social pain, can over time signal less distress in response to the same memory because the brain has learned new ways to handle the ache. There is a second mechanism at play, quieter but powerful, reconsolidation. Each time a memory is retrieved, it becomes briefly malleable before the brain stores it again. In that window, new information can attach to the old trace. An apology sincerely offered, boundaries clearly set, consistent accountability shown. These do not delete the memory, but they can soften its edges, adding layers of nuance that change how the past is felt in the present. In practice, this is forgiveness as a craft, not denial, not amnesia, but deliberate reshaping of what the memory means for you now. Forgiveness is sometimes described as release, and the body knows why. When you lean into practices that support it, slow breathing, grounding your attention in the senses, naming feelings without rushing to act, you are recruiting networks that increase parasympathetic tone, the system that steadies heart and breath. A calmer body gives the prefrontal cortex more room to work. It is easier to think clearly when the inner storm quiets. This is not mere sentiment, it is physics of the nervous system. Calm makes space, space allows choice. Still, the work of forgiveness does not promise naivety. Your brain's reward and threat systems keep their lessons. What changes is the weight of the lesson. With time, the prediction error that once slammed like a door "they failed me again" can become an open window. They hurt me, and I see it clearly, and I know what I need. In some relationships, renewed trust becomes possible. Consistent behavior lays new planks, and the bridge holds. In others, forgiveness widens your inner world even as the relationship ends. You let go so you do not carry the storm forward, even if you choose not to cross the bridge again. Philosophically, forgiveness asks something demanding, yet dignifying of you, to distinguish healing from reunion. Healing is yours to cultivate. Reunion requires two steady hands. Your brain can learn to release resentment, to decrease the automatic alarms, to transform a cutting memory into a contour in the landscape of your life. That learning does not obligate you to return to what harmed you. Forgiveness can be the way you stop rehearsing pain, not the way you excuse it. Consider a small, practical image, a jar of cloudy water left on a windowsill. If you shake it, the silt swirls and the water remains opaque. If you set it down, the particles settle. Forgiveness often begins as the act of setting the jar down. You let time and stillness allow separation. Here is what happened. Here is what I feel. Here is what I choose next. In those moments of rest, the brain's networks for perspective, those that hold long views and integrate competing feelings, become more active. You can perceive both the hurt and the humanity, both the boundary and the bond. Yet forgiveness is not only inner work, it is also relational practice. When someone seeks to rebuild trust with you, your nervous system learns from their consistency. You watch for alignment between words and actions, and each match adds a thread to the fabric. The prefrontal judge takes notes. The amygdala, over many calm exposures, reduces its hair trigger responses. This is exposure in social form, not exposure to fear alone, but exposure to safety repeated. The forest path grows smoother because you have walked it together in daylight. There is courage here, and it deserves naming. To forgive is to live with open eyes among sharp memories. You do not blind yourself to harm. You decide not to let harm dictate the shape of your life. The brain reflects this shift. Networks associated with compassion and perspective-taking become more available. The narrow tunnel of threat widens, revealing choices that fear had hidden from view. Pause and sense what softens in you when you imagine this. Not a sweeping absolution, but a steadying. I remember, I learn, I choose. Feel how different that is from the loop of rumination. One contracts and circles, the other expands and moves. This is the signature of neuroplastic change. Your inner map gains new roads that do not detour through the same pain each time. Of course, no practice guarantees a specific outcome. Some hurts are not safe to forgive up close. Some require distance to honor the truth of what was done. Your brain is wise enough to learn either path. What matters is that you are not bound to the first shape betrayal carved into your circuits. You can shape back. And so we arrive at a quiet threshold. Plastic brains can relearn trust. Stormed hearts can reopen, but every step toward trust carries the same ancient risk. There are no guarantees. To continue, you will need something larger than strategy and more tender than certainty. You will need a philosophy that makes space for risk itself, a way to stand at the edge of the unknown without gripping so tightly that the water slips away. Next, we turn toward that edge, the dignity and danger of opening your hands, the philosophy of vulnerability, where trust finally becomes what it has always been, a chosen exposure to the beloved and to life. Stand with me at a doorway. The room behind you is familiar, the smells, the furniture, the way the light hits the floor. Ahead is a space you cannot yet see. Someone you care about stands there, hand extended, asking you to come through. Your chest lifts and tightens at the same time. Part of you wants to step forward, part of you wants to retreat to what you know. This is vulnerability as your body feels it, a poised movement into uncertainty, a chosen exposure where no guarantee is possible. Your brain prefers the room it knows. Quietly, all day long, it tries to predict what will happen next, so it can keep you safe. Think of it as a careful cartographer, forever sketching the next bend in the road, comparing what arrives with what was expected. When you choose to trust, you invite the cartographer to draw beyond the map. That is why vulnerability feels risky, not because you are dramatic, but because the prediction systems inside you are being asked to tolerate a gap between what they can forecast and what they cannot. Scientists sometimes describe this as your mind minimizing surprise. In practice, it means your senses bring in signals, your deeper networks compare those signals with the story they were expecting, and your body adjusts. When a relationship is stable, the story matches the signals, the heart settles, the breath eases. When you open yourself to someone without certainty, you allow the mismatch to exist for a while. You let your body feel the space between what is known and what is hoped. Vulnerability is not ignorance, it is skilled tolerance of ambiguity. Notice how your body registers that ambiguity. The front of your chest grows more present, your breathing sits higher, your hands may become warm. A small region just inside your awareness, near where you sense your own heartbeat, monitors this internal shift. That region helps you feel what is happening inside you, so your decisions are not made only from ideas, but from embodied truth. It marks the difference between telling yourself you are safe and actually feeling safe enough to step forward. Another part of the brain weighs the cost and the worth. Think of it as your inner appraiser, estimating the value of connection against the possibility of harm. When the appraiser leans toward connection, warmth spreads. When it leans toward caution, your chest tightens. Importantly, that appraisal is not purely logical. It is influenced by your history of being held or dropped, by the pathways strengthened in earlier sections of your life. This is why vulnerability can feel easy with one person and impossible with another, not because the act is different, but because your inner appraiser is reading different ledgers. Here's a simple image. Imagine two scales. On one side sits the reward of being known, synchrony in conversation, the feeling of being seen, the spark in the body when closeness lands. On the other side sits the risk, the sting of dismissal, the ache of betrayal, the lonely echo of being misunderstood. When you step through the doorway, your brain does not pretend the second scale is empty. It allows both to be present and still decides to move. The decision is not the absence of fear. The decision is movement with fear acknowledged. Vulnerability also softens the lines between self and other. In moments of genuine openness, parts of your social brain engage to simulate the other's experience, to feel with rather than simply observe. Your mirror systems are not just scanning for threat, they are also practicing welcome. When you speak honestly and are met with honesty, reward pathways glow in ways that can be surprisingly steadying. You are not only receiving care, you are learning, moment by moment, that openness can be held. Over time, these experiences lay new paths your feet can recognize, so that the next doorway does not feel quite so perilous. None of this negates the risk. Vulnerability is costly because the very mechanisms that make connection sweet also make injury deep. You cannot anesthetize one without dulling the other. The same circuits that light when you are cherished will ache when you are dismissed. Philosophically, that is the condition of love. The door that lets warmth in is the door through which cold can enter. To live with the door sealed is to avoid drafts and sunlight. So how do you practice vulnerability without being careless? First, you learn the difference between exposure and collapse. Exposure is when you open at a pace your body can bear, with boundaries that remain intact. Collapse is when you abandon yourself in the name of closeness. The body knows the difference. In healthy exposure, breath is present, spine is long, attention is stable. In collapse, breath shortens, posture shrinks, attention scatters. Paying attention to these signals is not self-absorption, it is navigation. Second, you scaffold the leap. You don't jump from the cliff's edge. You use a bridge. People create bridges through rituals of reassurance, checking in at predictable times, giving clear signals, practicing repair after small ruptures. These repeated, simple behaviors are not trivial. They are the architecture that allows two nervous systems to risk more without flooding. When your inner appraiser can point to concrete patterns, the move into uncertainty becomes a measured stride, not a free fall. Third, you let meaning carry some of the weight. Vulnerability lasts not because it is always rewarded, but because it serves a value larger than comfort, honesty, intimacy, the dignity of showing up as you are. Your brain is not only a machine for avoiding pain, it is also a seeker of purpose. When your exposure is linked to something you deem worthy, your tolerance for uncertainty expands. You are not just stepping into the unknown for them, you are stepping into the kind of life you wish to live. Pause and feel the paradox settle. To reduce the suffering of distrust, you must sometimes accept more uncertainty, not less. The grip that tries to force safety tightens the knot. The open hand allows a different kind of safety to arise, one rooted in presence, in clear boundaries, in repeated repair, in the slow confidence that you can remain yourself while reaching outward. That is vulnerability's secret. It does not promise the other person, it promises you to yourself. And yet, you do not practice vulnerability alone. Across history, humans have built containers that hold risk, customs, vows, communal meals, shared songs, structures that steady the body while the heart opens. Culture, ritual, and even spiritual frames have long served as the scaffolding for this delicate act, reminding individuals that their leap is witnessed, supported, and held by something larger than two people in a room. This is where we go next, beyond the self, into the ways community, tradition, and meaning-making shape how your brain bears the beautiful, perilous weight of trust. Imagine a long wooden table under warm light. Bowls pass from hand to hand. A toast rises, glasses touch, and a gentle laughter lifts the room. Somewhere beyond the window night gathers, but in here there is a soft border of belonging. Later, voices drift into a shared song, imperfect, earnest, more about togetherness than pitch. Your shoulders drop, your breath finds an easier rhythm. You feel, without needing to think it, that these people will hold you if you stumble. Trust, suddenly, is not only a private choice inside your chest, it is a field you are standing in. The field has a shape. Culture gives it contours. Ritual gives it rhythm. Meaning gives it temperature. When a community says the same words together, moves in time, eats the same food, or marks the same milestones, your nervous system receives a message older than language. You are with your people. And when your body gets that message, vigilance loosens. The mind that guarded so fiercely a moment ago now allows itself to lean. There is quiet science behind this leaning. When people breathe together, speak in unison, or walk side by side, their bodies often begin to synchronize. Heartbeats drift towards similar tempos, breaths match pace, muscles settle into parallel patterns. Your brain, tuned to detect others, mirrors the cadence it perceives, and the alignment soothes your inner sentry. The amygdala is less quick to flare when the bodies around you move as one. It is as if a room full of small metronomes, each ticking alone, begins to steady into a single pulse. Touch and proximity add another layer, a hand on your shoulder at a wedding vow, a teammate's hug after a hard game, a parent's palm resting on the back during grief. These moments can release the chemistry of bonding inside you, softening threat and brightening reward. The warmth is real, the relief in your breathing is real. Your body reads the signal, safe enough to open. In this way, tradition becomes scaffolding for the nervous system. It steadies what wobbles. Rituals also lighten the work of prediction. Your brain loves patterns, and ritual is practiced pattern. You know the order of the vows, the shape of the meal, the sound of the hymn. Predictability reduces the effort of constant scanning. With fewer surprises to track, your prefrontal systems can rest, and resting systems are kinder systems. They interpret more generously, they forgive more easily. In this rested state, trust does not have to fight so hard to be chosen. Shared stories deepen the effect. A community's narrative about loyalty, about the meaning of promises, about why we show up when it is inconvenient, becomes a map your mind can lean on. It is not merely belief, it is infrastructure. The story says, this is who we are, and your behavior aligns, often with less inner struggle. In the presence of strong, humane stories, you are less alone in holding trust. The narrative holds some of the weight, like a beam built into the house long before you lived in it. There is also a gentle physiology in collective stillness. In a circle of meditation, a quiet chapel, a sunset observed together on a hillside, breathing slows. The body's calming branch, the one that softens heart rate and deepens exhale, comes forward. This softening does not erase pain, but it changes how pain is carried. Social pain, which can feel like a wound, is eased when the body is settled and the room around you is kind. The ache does not vanish, it becomes bearable. Yet culture is not only cradle, it can be cage. The same forces that knit people together can draw hard borders around who belongs and who does not. In-groups deepen trust internally while sowing suspicion outward. A ritual may steady your nervous system, but it can also tilt your judgments. You may trust too quickly inside the circle and distrust too quickly outside it. The brain's machinery for us and them sits close to the machinery for safety and danger. Belonging can comfort or blind. Philosophically, this complicates the picture. If trust is buoyed by culture, then trust is never completely personal. Each time you weigh a partner's intentions or a friend's reliability, old songs hum in the background, family rules, community tales, spiritual frames. You are not only choosing, you are being carried. And because these currents are strong, it helps to ask gentle questions. Does this practice widen kindness or tighten control? Does this story make me more honest or more afraid? The nervous system listens to your answers. Consider how this plays out in modern rooms. A team stands in a huddle, hands stacked, repeating a short phrase before they begin. A couple builds a weekly ritual, walks at dusk, phones away. A group of friends shares a meal, where the first thing on the table is a single, simple invitation. Tell one true thing about your week. None of these are grand ceremonies. Each is a small repeated structure that teaches 2 nervous systems, or 10, to expect repair, to expect presence, to expect return. The lesson is absorbed beneath awareness. Trust learns to arrive sooner. Meaning frames help when things break. In some traditions there are rituals for forgiveness and repair, words to say, gestures to make, ways of returning after harm. There is wisdom here for the brain. When repair has a shape, the mind that fears chaos can rest. Steps replace spirals. You know what to try next. And if the other person walks the same steps with sincerity, your inner sentry takes note. Over time, repeated repair becomes evidence the body believes. But meaning can also be misused. Some stories excuse harm in the name of unity. Some rituals ask for silence when truth is needed. Your nervous system senses the difference. In healthy culture, your breath deepens and your spine is tall. In coercive culture, breath shortens and your gaze lowers. The body does not lie. When the practices that claim to build trust actually constrict you, they are not trust, they are control. So you stand before a choice. You can let the wisdom of culture and ritual support your openness. Food shared, breath synced, vows honored, repairs practiced, or you can notice when those same forms harden into something that asks you to vanish yourself. Trust flourishes in structures that protect dignity while welcoming exposure. It withers where exposure is demanded without care. Pause and feel how this lands. Perhaps a memory rises, a song that always steadies you, a holiday that tenderizes everyone a little, a circle where your voice was safe. Perhaps another memory comes too, a room where you felt small, where the script asked you to be less than true. Both are teachers. The first shows how trust can be grown together. The second shows what to release. Which brings us to the quiet art that waits at the end of this journey. You have studied alarms and chemistry, maps from childhood, the fires of evolution, and the fields of community. You have felt how trust frays and how it learns to mend. There remains one more movement, not a grasp, but a loosening, a way of letting go that does not abandon care, and a way of holding that does not harden into fear. Next we will practice that gentlest strength, the quiet power of release. Imagine you have been gripping a rope over a river all day. Your fingers ache, your forearms burn. The rope leads to the person you care about on the other bank, and somewhere along the way you began to believe that if you ever loosened your grip even a little, you would be swept away. Release begins when you notice that belief and test it gently. You loosen a fraction, the rope is still there, the current still moves, but you remain. In the body, this is what letting go feels like, not a dramatic fall, but the discovery that you can soften without disappearing. Inside you, release has a physiology. When you exhale longer than you inhale, pressure sensors and quiet pathways signal to the heart that the danger has eased. The body's calming branch steps forward, and the amygdala's watchtower dims its torch. A small region that senses your heartbeat, a place that helps you read your own interior weather, registers the shift. Your chest broadens, the skin on your face warms, nothing outside has changed, and yet you feel more room inside the same moment. Letting go is not magic, it is cooperation with the systems that steady you. Release also has a psychology. The prefrontal judge you met earlier returns, not to argue, but to reframe. It places jealousy's alarms on a wider map. Yes, the alarm rings, and yes, I can wait. Yes, uncertainty exists, and yes, I can breathe within it. With repetition, the threat memory that once hijacked your body begins to pair with new signals. Calm posture, slower breath, clear boundary. This is safety learning. You are not erasing fear, you are teaching it a new home. But release is not resignation. Resignation is the collapse that comes when you stop caring. Release is the poise that comes when you care without clinging. One shrinks you, the other frees you. In practice, the difference is felt in your spine. When you release well, you stand upright. Your voice does not plead, it tells the truth. You do not trade your inner ground for proximity. You let closeness arrive where honesty allows it, and you let distance remain where dignity requires it. Think of your attention as a lantern rather than a searchlight. A searchlight hunts for threat, cuts the world into narrow beams, and tires the eyes. A lantern lights what is here. When you shift from hunting to lighting, your social brain stops scraping every moment for evidence of harm and starts receiving the moment for what it is. A late reply is a late reply. A quiet night is a quiet night. The mind does not rush to fill the space with stories, and in that space you make better choices, not because you know the future, but because you are not at war with the present. Release changes how memory sits in you. Earlier the double-edged sword cut with every recall. Now, when the same memory rises, you notice the ache, name it, breathe, and feel your feet on the floor. The act is simple, but the effect is profound. The memory reconsolidates with less heat. You remain the one holding the sword no longer swings you. Over time, the loop of rumination loosens. The inner narrator lifts its pen between sentences. Quiet enters the margins. Release transforms how you relate to the other person. You stop negotiating for safety by managing their every move and start negotiating for safety by honoring your own. Boundaries become the shoreline that keeps the river from swallowing the land. You can say, "Here is what I need to remain open," and you can listen for whether they are willing and able to meet you there. If they are, the bridge gains new planks. If they are not, the shoreline keeps you from drowning in the promise of what might be. Release makes room for both outcomes without tearing you apart. Philosophically, release is trust's deepest form because it honors reality. It acknowledges that love is not ownership, that certainty is not available, that people are free, and that freedom includes the freedom to stay with you or to walk away. When you practice release, you are not giving up on intimacy, you are giving up on the fantasy of control. You are choosing relationship over surveillance, presence over prediction, truth over tactics. Pause and feel the subtle courage of this stance. You open your palm and discover that openness is not emptiness. It is a way of holding life that lets life breathe. The breath you just took is the proof. You did not force it, you allowed it, and there is a quiet intelligence in allowing one that spreads through your nervous system like warm light through a winter window. There are days when release will feel easy, and days when your grip tightens without asking. That is not failure, that is the rhythm of a human nervous system meeting a human world. On those tighter days, return to the smallest unit of freedom you can find. One slower exhale, one honest sentence, one softened shoulder. Let these become your practice. Practice becomes pattern, pattern becomes character, and character is how trust recognizes you when it returns. Imagine now that same rope above the river. You look across and see the person you love. Perhaps they are holding their own rope loosely, perhaps firmly, perhaps not at all. You cannot decide for them. You can only choose how you hold yours. You lift your eyes to the wider landscape, the banks, the water, the sky, and you notice something you had missed while staring at your hands. There is a bridge, a little downstream. You can walk there together, or you can walk there alone. Either way, you will be walking upright, breathing, present, capable of trust because you are practicing release. Let your attention settle like silt in clear water. You have walked through watchtowers and fog, through the sweetness of bonds and the ache that shadows them, and now there is a sense of wider space around each thought. The room you are in has its own quiet weather, a softness you can notice when you are not chasing answers, and the body understands that noticing is enough for now. You can feel the outline of your shoulders, the gentle weight of your hands, the slow architecture of a breath that arrives, expands, and leaves without hurry. Trust, as you have seen, is not a single decision but a way of moving through conversations, through silences, through memory and possibility. The mind will still open its old drawers from time to time, an echo will still rise. When it does, you do not have to reach for the rope again. You can place one thought beside another thought, one feeling beside another feeling, and allow them to coexist without choosing a battle. The nervous system is listening when you do this. It loosens its fist. It lends you a little more light. Perhaps a face comes to mind, the one you keep close, or the one you have released. Offer it the simplest generosity. May I be steady. May you be free. No verdict, no verdicts at all, just the human wish for steadiness and freedom, yours and theirs. This wish is not a spell, it is a posture. It is how the body stands when it trusts the ground. And as the moments lengthen, notice the texture of the quiet you have made. It is the kind that can hold a conversation, or hold sleep, or hold nothing in particular. It is large enough for your questions, and soft enough for your rest. You have learned something true tonight, and you do not have to carry it tightly. Let it rest beside you like a book closed gently, a lantern dimmed but still warm. The path will be there when you want to walk again,